Welcome to this new automotive news video. It's Wednesday, July 22, 2026. On the agenda today, we'll be talking about Stellantis and Peugeot, who are finally putting an end to the nightmare. About the 1.3 PureTech engine about Volkswagen, which is unveiling its new hybrid engine that turns out to be rather disappointing. And about BMW, who wants to use artificial intelligence to convince you to buy one of their cars. And about Range Rover, which has just unveiled the most astonishing model in its history. I hope today's topics will interest you. If that's the case, I count on you to show it, as usual, by leaving a like, subscribing for the next videos, boosting this one if that option shows up for you, and of course by leaving a little comment in which you share your opinion about today's news. After years of letting Toyota dominate the hybrid market, Volkswagen is finally presenting its brand new full hybrid technology. The goal is clear: to catch up with Toyota, which is doing extremely well both in Europe and the United States thanks to this type of powertrain. This new hybrid system will also arrive at Skoda in a few months, and probably later at Seat, Cupra, and Audi. It will make its debut under the hood of the new generation Golf and T-Roc, which are now available as full hybrids. Under the hood, there will be a 170 horsepower powertrain which combines a 1.5 turbo TSI Evo 2 gasoline engine with an electric motor and a 1.6 kWh NMC battery. So that's good. Volkswagen is getting into full hybrids a little late, but the problem is that the fuel consumption figures announced for this new engine are higher than what the competition offers. There are cases where it's not too bad, like with the hybrid Golf, which claims a minimum fuel consumption of 4.6 liters per 100 kilometers, with CO2 emissions of 104 grams per kilometer. Those are decent numbers, but they're still higher than those of Toyota, for example, with its hybrid Corolla claiming 4.4 liters per 100 kilometers with only 100 grams of CO2. But there are cases where it's a bit more annoying, because with the T-Roc hybrid, with this new engine, it officially averages 5.0 to 5.3 liters per 100 kilometers and emits an average of 115 grams of CO2 per kilometer. So it exceeds the ecological penalty threshold, which means that in 2026, you'll have to pay at least 210 euros in tax, 210 euros in penalty when registering this car, even for the entry-level version, an amount that will increase with higher trim levels or with larger wheels, since the fuel consumption goes up even more. In comparison, Toyota does much better with its Yaris Cross Hybrid, which starts at 100 grams of CO2 per kilometer, allowing you to completely avoid the penalty in its base configuration. The same goes for the Toyota CHR Hybrid, which comes in at 105 grams. Now, the most important question remains: the price. Toyota's competing hybrid models start below 35,000 euros, while Volkswagen is still banking on its premium image and will probably ask for more than 40,000 euros for its new versions of the Golf and the T-Roc hybrid. Will customers agree to pay more and also pay more taxes, only to end up using more fuel than the competition? On one side, we have Volkswagen trying to catch up on hybrids, and on the other, we have Stellantis and Peugeot, who are now definitely turning the page on PureTech. This time, it's truly the end of an era, the end of the nightmare. Because after years of controversy, reliability issues, and recalls, Stellantis has just made a highly symbolic decision. The production of the 1.2 PureTech engine at Courroy will be permanently stopped before the end of the year. It's something that's not well known. Everyone thinks that the 1.2 belt-driven engine no longer exists, and that it has been completely replaced under the hood by the 1.2 chain-driven engine. It continues to be sold and produced in the French factories in the north of France, in Douvrin. A permanent halt to the production of the 1.2 PureTech, which isn't even due to these reliability issues, but rather an economic decision, since this factory, the one in Douvrin, will cease all activity starting October 30, 2026. This isn't such a surprising decision, because the factory had already lost the production of the 1.5 Blue HD diesel last year. There was only the assembly of the belt-driven 1.2 PureTech EB2 G2 left, except that little by little, Stellantis is replacing them with chain-driven engines, and has also planned to eventually replace the 1.2-liter engines with Italian engines, mainly based on the Firefly. Starting from the end of October 2026, this belt-driven 1.2 PureTech will only be produced in Stellantis' Polish factories, where the end of production for this engine is already scheduled for the end of 2026. So normally, at the beginning of 2027, we will finally be rid of this engine block, which will have lasted nearly 15 years, and which, for 15 years, has seriously damaged Peugeot's reputation for quality. This engine, let's remember, was praised at its launch for its excellent balance between performance and fuel consumption. It even won the Engine of the Year award several times before, just a few years later, the first controversies about this engine's reliability exploded on social media. The fact remains that with these engines continuing to be assembled until the end of 2026 and still being sold in Europe, there's a very strong chance we'll keep seeing them on the used car market for many years to come. So in a few months or a few years, when you feel like buying a used 208, 308, or 2008 from Europe, make sure to check which engine code it has under the hood. And don't hesitate to check out the different videos about the 1-liter PureTech issue to really understand the whole issue. In the meantime, Alain Favier, the director at Peugeot, has just confirmed that for some of their models, like the 208, their sale with a combustion engine based on the 1.3 turbo, which is a cousin of the 1.3 PureTech, would be extended at least until the year 2030. Even after the arrival of the new all-electric generations. An engine that, for now, hasn't really made headlines for reliability issues. But it's still wise to remain cautious about it, since it's simply too new for reliability issues to have surfaced yet. At BMW, artificial intelligence will now be the main reason to buy their cars, not the engine. That's the new crazy idea from BMW. They no longer want you to go to their website to configure your next car, but instead want to convince you through artificial intelligence systems. Previously, the buying process was nearly always the same. You researched online, used the configurator, then visited the dealership to see the car. But for BMW, this way of doing things is changing, since the German manufacturer has just launched a plugin directly integrated into every ChatGPT. Now you can simply describe your needs in natural language instead of navigating many menus. For example, mention you have a large family, want a 4-wheel drive, your budget, and preferred range, and the artificial intelligence of each ChatGPT will automatically suggest the most suitable models and configurations for you. Once you've made your choice, the configuration is then transferred to BMW's official configurator, which is not intended to disappear for now. In reality, BMW mainly wants to move the first step of the buying process. According to the manufacturer, the discovery and advice phase no longer necessarily has to take place on its website or directly at a dealership with a real human advisor. This change comes at a time when online configurators are regularly criticized. A study published this spring by the Simon Kucher firm gave them an average score of only 46 out of 100, highlighting issues such as imperfect ergonomics, prices that are sometimes hard to understand, and a lack of comparisons. You just have to go to any configurator to see that prices are always shown before penalties and after incentives. That it's sometimes very complicated to find out how to display the actual price of the vehicle instead of its leasing price, and that most of the technical information about the engines has disappeared. For example, it's become very complicated on the BMW configurator to find out what engine displacement and what type of engine you're actually going to have under the hood. A change that may seem subtle, but it could disrupt the digital strategy of the entire automotive industry, since after gradually moving the first customer contact from the dealership to their website, manufacturers could now accept that this first conversation starts directly with an AI. Now the big question remains, will drivers really adopt this new way of choosing their car? One thing is certain, this change is becoming widespread. The battle will probably no longer be about who has the most comprehensive configurator, but about which brand AI will recommend first on its own. While some manufacturers are working on their future technology, others continue to innovate directly on their models, and in fact, Land Rover has just unveiled a completely new Range Rover. Range Rover is turning a new page in its history. The British manufacturer has just officially unveiled a brand new model called the Range Rover GT, which simply doesn't look like any other Range Rover launched so far. Its goal is to combine the comfort of a large luxury Grand Tour with the versatility of an SUV. As an aside, what versatility? Since these aren't particularly efficient vehicles on the highway, they're not made for the city either. And they don't have as much interior space as a minivan or a station wagon. But well, that's what Range Rover says. The brand says this is the most sedan-like Range Rover ever designed. Contrary to the first rumors, it won't replace the Velar. It'll simply be another model. And the Velar will continue to be sold alongside it. It has a very sleek profile, a sloping roof like a coupe, and actually very little window surface, which means that in my opinion, maneuvering this vehicle in the city, in streets like ours in France, must be particularly complicated. Improved aerodynamics not only add style, but also boost range, efficiency, and acoustic comfort. Land Rover says this will be the quietest Range Rover yet, a vehicle that probably won't have any off-road capabilities, since it's much lower than a traditional Range Rover. It will be offered exclusively with all-wheel drive, and initially with electric powertrains. Its chassis also allows for hybrid engines, so there's a good chance that Range Rover will unveil one in the near future. Inside, you'll find an even more streamlined cabin with a completely redesigned layout. Among the new features is a higher-positioned instrument cluster and a large horizontal central screen. The goal is to create a calmer and more relaxing environment without multiplying the number of screens. Physical controls are becoming rare, with the gear selector now a lever behind the steering wheel and climate control fully integrated into the touchscreen. A new screen will operate with brand new software, completely different from that of other current Range Rovers. It promises a much simpler interface with fewer steps. This will be the brand's first vehicle to use GLR's new EMA platform, a platform that will also be used for the development of the future Thunder Vendor Sport and apparently also the next Range Rover Evoque. On the possible risks of competing with other models in the lineup, Martin Limpert, the managing director of Range Rover, was reassuring, explaining that in his view, the Range Sport will remain the model dedicated to performance, the Velar will keep its role as the SUV with contemporary design, and the Range Rover GT will become the benchmark for those who are primarily looking for the pleasure of long journeys. Looking forward to seeing what kind of range and battery it will have. Keep in mind that some time ago there was talk of having around 500 to 600 kilometers range. WLTP. Can we really talk about enjoying long trips with a vehicle that can't manage them? That's today's news. I hope you found the video interesting, and if so, please show your support by leaving a like, subscribing for future videos, and becoming a supporter through the join button below this video. I'll see you tomorrow for the next one. Ciao.